Happy and a healthy new year to everyone. And welcome to my initial 2026 rant of political misery, intrigue, and presidential stupidity. And I'm going to start off by reading a quote recently from a very prominent billionaire gentleman. And it goes like this: as bad as the lack of ethics, lack of character, and lack of honesty is the fact that he makes no effort to learn anything. This is one of the few human beings on the planet that gets dumber in front of our faces every single day. And, you know, that's kind of the nice, euphemistic way of talking about our current leader. Of course, that's Donald Trump. Sig Heil. That shitbag, has brought us to new lows and himself to new highs of delusional dictatorship and dictatorial behavior. Mark Cuban said that. That's a Mark Cuban quote. At least that's what I found on Facebook. And again, in the world of AI, it may not be Mark Cuban's, but to me, it's a reasonable quote nonetheless. I don't even know where to begin. I guess we're in phase 2 of a new world where our government's going to take over the Western Hemisphere. They started with making a deal with people that are as corrupt as Maduro, but they've arrested Maduro, so they think that America should be, having a party about that. I don't know all the facts and details behind the scenes, obviously. None of us do. But we're not being told the truth. What is obvious is that Trump has made a deal with Maduro's second in command to get some oil for free. He thinks that makes him look great. He also pretends that, we're going to rebuild the institutional and production capabilities of Venezuelan oil for our good here in the U.S. And I don't know, I think a lot of that oil is already pre-sold to China and Russia. And again, the politics are murky. The economics are murkier. All I know that it's obvious that instead of backing the people's choice for a new president in Venezuela, Trump and his cronies have decided to do business with Maduro's second in command, who could actually, in some cases, be even worse than Maduro. She's been number 2, and nobody really looks at what number 2 does. But I know this: number 2 tries harder. So number 2 could be just as bad or worse than Maduro. And then I guess there was some conversation about doing the same thing to Colombia and taking over Cuba. And of course, we want to take over Greenland, either by purchase or by force. Another sickening development in the world of Trump's global political maneuvering. I guess he thinks everything is like the game of risk, except he never considers what the risks are, because he doesn't think things through beyond the nose on his face. And if Trump is not going to gain any personal benefit, whether it's power or money, he's not interested in it. But that's clearly what he is interested in. Not doing the right thing, not doing what's best for America and Americans, but what's best for Trump and his cronies is the way he operates. So, he's on par with Putin and Xi Jinping and Maduro, and even, to some extent, the criminals like the mafia, the Cosa Nostra, the Colombian drug cartels, the Mexican drug cartels. And there are a lot of parallels between all of those gentlemen and Hitler and Hitler's machine, the propaganda machine. And Trump and his buddies Stephen Miller and Hegseth. These are all guys that shouldn't be in the position that they're in because they just don't have the right qualities or education or human factors to be at that level of government. That being said, I'd like to take some questions because I'm disgusted by what I see. I'm disgusted by what I read. And, I fear for this nation the way I think we all should have a little fear. If we don't, we're thinking about the apocalypse or living in a bunker. And that's not the way I see that would be best for America to live its future. So I don't know what this idiot's going to do next. But he frightens me. He frightens me because of his level of stupidity. He frightens me because his level of selfishness. He frightens me because of the people he surrounds himself with. And that's not a good sign for anything. So our future as America and as individual Americans is greatly at risk. So anyway, I'd like to throw out, to my viewers and people that are, tuning in, I'd like to hear what they have to ask. So, not so much that I can pontificate, but I just think that we should talk about these things that are going on and how they, their potential harm, any potential good. And let's get a dialogue going about, what we should be doing as individuals to move forward, because it's not a pretty sight. I mean, it's just not. It's not a good sight, and it's our president is setting precedents that look eerily similar to these other dictatorships around the world, and I don't see how that helps anything unless all the dictators get together and play canasta, and maybe they feel good about that. But I think that a little bit of what Trump wants to do is feed Americans some kind of gossip, some kind of medicated conversation about how great we are and how right we are in doing whatever it is he does at the governmental level, to kind of delude the American public into thinking, business as usual, everything's great, we're all good, we're always right, fuck the other guys, they're all shithole nations. And the truth is, Donald has done a lot to create the U.S. Express train to becoming a shithole nation, regardless. So I don't want to be in a shithole nation, and I just don't think that we can do anything other than to vote these kind of morons and criminals out of office, and even if that's possible, because, at some point I think that, Donald Trump doesn't want to deal with midterm elections, so maybe he'll cancel them. Maybe he'll, have the Supreme Court change the law, or just adjudicate him the president for life. And it's a fucking mess. And if people don't see that, they ought to fucking wake up, because I'm nauseated. Many people that I read and talk to, they're nauseated. And we're all living in some level of fear, except the gun-toting morons that say, okay, Donald Trump, do whatever the fuck you want because we're behind you. They don't even know what they're behind or why they're behind, but they like being behind somebody that talks his game and operates on a very biased, discriminatory, selfish basis. So fuck Trump and his cronies. Fuck those sycophants that have their tongue up his ass. And let's get on with being a great power and a great nation. Like I said, it's pretty scary. So I want to hear what my viewers have to say or what they have to ask. And I'll be happy to put in my 2 cents.
All right, one of your listeners, Mia Avery, asks, are you a Republican or a Democrat? And what do you want to see in 2026 with the political party that you believe in?
Okay, that's interesting. I'm politically motivated for sure. I can't say that I'm a Republican or a Democrat. I have in the past voted more Democratic than Republican. That's my history of voting. I have not ever or will not ever vote for Donald J. Trump or any of his clowns. I think that nowadays I'm truly an independent. I think that there's kind of right thoughts on both sides of the aisle. Like I'm not for big government, but I'm for responsible government. I don't think we have responsible government, even under the guise of taking apart and dismantling government that's not working right. I think that to destroy it, to rebuild it, is probably not the right way to go. But I'm truly an independent at this point, and I think there's got to be some level, this small, but some level of morality in government, some matter of discipline in government. It's insane to think that it should even be allowed that one party or another owns and controls each branch of government, whether it's the Congress in whole, in the executive branch, in the judicial branch. That's a bad mistake for that to be able to be the case. Political favors owed by Supreme Court justices and not having an ethics plan that every political leader, party, congressman, senator, judges, they all should follow the same fucking set of rules. I mean, there is no honor in government. That's part of the big problem. The second problem is that it's always, one hand washing the other, and you're not going to stop that, but it's got to be mitigated. So I'm an independent. I think freely. I try to learn about what I think are the critical issues and vote accordingly. And again, I don't know that we'll be able to vote freely in the future because Trump and his cronies have put a lot of question marks on the legitimacy of elections, and he likes to take control. And, I really don't know. There may not be elections in the future. So what do we do then? But I think that we should have a more thoughtful government, a more balanced government, a more humane government. And right now, and some of my fears are based on the fact, very simple things, changing the Department of Defense to the Department of War, changing the Gulf of Mexico to the Gulf of America, removing one scumbag from a whole chain of scumbags does not do anything to change that existing problem with Venezuela. Doesn't do anything except probably line the pockets of a few of Trump's buddies and make him look powerful. Taking over Greenland by force or by money is not something that the Danish want. It's not something that NATO wants. So why do it? I don't know. I can't vote for that kind of behavior. Taking over Cuba, I don't know. Maybe that made more sense than going after Venezuela, except for the fact they don't have oil. So what are the real motives of capturing Maduro? Colombia's got its own problems. Why do we want to threaten to take over Colombia? How's that going to help us? Is there less fentanyl coming into this country, less cocaine? Maybe a tiny little bit, but there got to be other ways to deal with those issues. I don't know. Taking over countries and additional territories doesn't seem to me to be in our long-term best interest. Even China has done their takeovers more shrewdly and more privately, probably because they think things through and think on a longer runway. I mean, Putin is not at all like Xi Jinping. He just wants to, destroy nations and take territory so that he can control the territory and the people within. And I don't know, Trump seems to have a lot of Putin in him. And so that's where I am. I'm an independent, and to me, the situation now in Washington is untenable. As an American, as an independent thinker, as a person who understands how the two-party system works, or doesn't. But yeah, I'm independent. I hope that answers your question or her question.
Matt Jones wants to know, Minnesota is in the news with corruption. What do you think has happened in Minnesota, and why is this making headlines?
Okay, so like most people, I only know what I see on the news or read, and I limit that. But corruption has always been around. Corruption has been around since Cain and Abel. I mean, it's nothing you're going to stop. I think the goal should be to mitigate it. And when it comes to these public programs, again, that's a governmental failure. It's not a one-person failure. It's a whole governmental failure. Programs that are implemented to help people need proper oversight. And when they don't have proper oversight, corruption is obviously capable of running rampant. And everything is not solved with military action. So the breakdown is where is the oversight and what failed? And then we have to retool programs, because the programs that we're talking about were started to assist Americans, to assist people because they needed it for child daycare so the parents could work. These are things that society has to answer to. Society has to build some kind of public or public-private and private-public, religious-private, whatever, programs to help the underprivileged and to help the people that really do need help when it comes to medication, when it comes to daycare so the parents can work. These are all programs that need to be in existence in some fashion. And again, if this fashion got out of control and the oversight went blank or went silent, that's the problem. Where do all the billions of dollars go? Just like with the COVID frauds and the Medicare frauds. It's not that Medicare is no good. The oversight's no fucking good. And nowadays with the technology we have, that ought to help with the oversight. But be that as it may, you don't terminate Medicare just because there's Medicare fraud. I mean, right now I read that Trump is withholding $10 billion of aid to these states and cities that need it for their poor population. So do you throw the baby out with the bathwater? Do you punish all the innocent people? No, you find the corruption, you try to plug the holes, you try to fix it, you try to create better oversight so that things could be caught earlier, and these problems could be caught earlier, and you do your best to go forward. You must understand, however, there is corruption in all phases of government and industry because it's always been there. We cannot solve that problem because we cannot guarantee that all people operate from total goodness and altruistic intent. Anything else?
We got two more. Miles
Okay.
Gavin says, I enjoyed your informational health episode. What do you think about the childhood vaccine schedule changing overnight?
I'm not a medical researcher or a doctor, but I've had every vaccination, and I've had COVID vaccinations, and I've had tons and tons of surgeries and shots, and I'm no no more autistic or less autistic than I would have been. I think changing the schedule of vaccinations should be done based on scientific research and good decision making. So when you have people in government that are making these decisions that are thinking about these things more on a religious or a political view or a governmental intervention in our lives view, I think that's a problem. I don't know what needs to be changed in the vaccination kind of system in terms of the government, but I don't understand polio vaccine, the measles, mumps, rubella, all those things. I've had them all, and I thank God that I've had them all. Maybe I would have been more sickly. Maybe there's some slight millionth of a percent chance that I could have become autistic or something. I don't know, but I think that my parents were concerned enough to make sure I got vaccinated. I was concerned enough to make sure my kids got vaccinated. I don't think that there's a conspiracy out there to create this whole nation of autistic people, although we do have a lot of people in this nation that need to, some emotional and mental support and some educational support. But I don't understand that whole thing where that's got to be the main thrust of our health and human services. I think that's a disgrace in general. Go ahead.
Adam Black wants to know if you believe in aliens,
Aliens?
life outside of planet Earth.
Yeah. Again, I know nothing outside of my own small world here on this fucked up planet, but I'm pretty sure there are aliens. I hope they're. I don't know. I guess I'm going to say it the wrong way, but I hope they have some level of humanity. If we ever come in contact with them on a larger scale or a large scale, but I would find it to be interesting. I think there are. Why not? I mean, with all the things we're learning and seeing with these Webb and Hubble telescopes, God knows it's so much. The universe and universes are so much larger than we are. I would say that there's a very high probability that there are aliens out there. I just don't know where. And I'd like to meet them, to tell you the truth. I got nothing to do Saturday. I'd be happy to meet them. So any aliens out there, please give me a ring. Let's meet.
Dan Treble wants to know why you moved to Texas.
Oh, why did I move to Texas? Well, I've lived in a few states, but before I moved to Texas, I lived in Florida. At the time, Florida wasn't a shithole state. Now it is. In my opinion, and growing up, I always thought Texas was a shithole state. And I still think it's a shithole state in a lot of ways. But that being said, it's got some benefits. It's in the middle of the country. It's got a lot of land. Industry is growing. Business is growing. Population is growing from other parts of the country, California, from Florida, from New York. And that's because there's business and money opportunities in Texas that don't exist elsewhere. I remember when I moved from Florida, I felt like I got a great big raise. So I had some additional economic freedom. But, after 10 years, that fades away. You get to see the reality, property taxes going up. It suffers the same infrastructure problems that other states do. So I guess the good news is Texas is growing. It's much more cosmopolitan than I had seen in the earlier days of my life when I passed through here. It's got more going on from an economic base standpoint. It's not just oil and energy. It's biotech and lots of other, beneficial industries coming in here, manufacturing. Large companies are moving their headquarters here. So I think that's great for Texas. Um, I moved here because my wife at the time wanted to be closer to her friends and her parents and our kids were young, and it was a time that we could do that. Um, she wasn't happy living in Florida. That's okay. I can understand that. And so we uprooted ourselves and moved here. And it has its pros and its cons. I think socially it's kind of backwards, but then again, it's kind of an enigma because there are a lot. It's multicultural now. A lot of good, reasonably good ethnic food, better than American food. I mean, they got good steakhouses, but a lot of the other restaurants that people eat at are just crappy chain restaurants. So I'm glad that there's Asian and Indian ethnic populations here that you can get some different and good food. Um, so I'm not unhappy with having moved to Texas. I just don't like where Texas is in a politically and socially and libertarian point of view because they're not. It's politically, it's a little bit too right wing for me. But other than that, I'm here and I'm here to stay because my kids are here and going to make the best of it. And hopefully we'll get better restaurants. So that's my history of moving to Texas. I moved here under duress, but it hasn't been all bad.
All right, we got one last question. Christian Bitterness wants to know, what do I do with my anger and resentment with the church?
With the church. Okay. Well, anger and bitterness can't be buried and stuffed because that just makes people sick and worse and it festers. So I'm all for getting it out. So the question is, how do I get it out? Do I write about it? Do I speak out about it? Is it my church and how am I inconvenienced and how difficult is it to find another church? But I'll help you. I mean, you talk to me about it and we'll put it on the show and we'll talk about your personal anger and upsetness. And, again, if it's with a particular church or the church in general, you might have to make some changes in your life. But I can see that. People are all, I was unhappy with some of the things in my religious institutions. So, that being said, the only thing you can really do is talk about it, get it out. Call me, write me, whatever, and we'll talk about it on the show and see if we could help talk you through to a point where you could take some positive action. And I thank you for your question.